Hello, friends.
Hi, everyone. We're glad you could join us once again, and we hope you're sitting down for a break in your day and having a cup of hot tea or beverage with us.
For sure.
We're delighted to have you join us.
Yes, it's always good to connect with you every week. We are Tamara and Twila. We have a little shop called Good Earth Gatherings just south of Lawrence, Kansas, and we run Good Earth Herb School, and we teach many other classes as well. And we love connecting with you every week. We hope that you had a chance to go out and see the Eclipse this past week. That was a big event.
It was a big deal, I thought, in a lot of ways. We had about 87 to 90% totality here.
It was really cool.
And even though we weren't in the path of totality, I thought what we saw was phenomenal, amazing, magical.
Yes, magical for sure.
I think that, this is the time poetry is done, I believe. And I loved seeing the shadows on the pavement, the driveway, and so on. They were different than not when it gets just cloudy.
No, yeah.
This was so different.
It was.
You could feel it.
Yeah, I saw a really neat story about a science teacher who in 1978 told his students to put it on their calendar. 50 years, there's going to be this eclipse in 2024. And he invited them to come watch it with him. And he had many students show up 50 years later. And he was really shocked. And I love that too. And to think that people were planning to watch this 50 years ago. And I think it's a good thing to always put in our calendars and take a moment to really revel in the wonder of it.
Well, I think that, we find the beauty and the magic in everything if we choose to let it in. And this was really an example of that. I looked out my kitchen window this morning, and guess what I saw?
What'd you see?
I have yellow iris bloom.
Oh, my goodness. Already.
Well, these are an early iris. They are not the little mini ones that have bloomed and are gone already. These are about 12 inches tall, maybe 14 inches tall. And they have a nice big bloom on them. And they are very, very pretty. Again, there's that beauty you find in each and every day if you choose to look for it. And sometimes it finds you, and sometimes you find it.
Yeah.
But that was a wonderful thing to look out and see. So
marvelous.
I must go out and say hello to them today.
Yes.
And so we have something new on our shelves, don't we?
Yes, at the shop. It's something that I've wanted to share with you all and to chat with you about for a minute. And I wanted to wait until we had some to show you. And that is something that we all are familiar with. We all eat it every single day. And did you know it's something that the root word of it is salary, like what you're paid, because it was once a very rare and prized item, but now everybody has it on their table, and that is salt.
And I think a lot of people are confused about salt, too. Do we get enough, or do we get too much?
For sure. Yeah, I know you were talking about a news story you saw the other day on salt. And there's been a belief for a long time that too much salt leads to hypertension. And I think it's important that if someone's telling you that you do your own research. Anytime somebody is telling you anything about health, it's a good idea to do our own research or look at trusted sources. There's lots of conflicting information about that. Matter of fact, there was a study that you can find on PubMed done in 2017 that implicated sugar rather than salt for hypertension, which I think makes some sense. And I think it's important to realize that there's more to blood pressure than how much salt we eat, because a lot of times that is a potassium issue as well, because sodium and potassium levels in the body need to be in proportion. And people don't realize that sometimes when you feel like you're craving salt, you may actually be craving potassium. Recent evidence suggests that all-out salt reduction sometimes has an overall negative impact on aspects of health. And so studies seem to show that people with a medium salt intake live longer than those who eat too little or too much salt. So that's around 2 teaspoons of salt a day is what they consider to be a medium intake. And it's important to recognize too that that's not just the salt that you add to your food, because if you're eating bacon in the morning, you're getting salt in your bacon, right? And if you're eating chips, you're getting salt in your chips. Any kind of processed food has salt. And of course, if you eat out, especially fast food, that counts as processed foods. It's important to avoid those because they have as much salt as they can put in and not taste funny. As a matter of fact, food manufacturers have what they call a sweet spot, and that is how much sugar they can add and how much salt they can add before it's too much. And that's how much they add. And so they add as much as they can without it tasting like too much, because that is something that, our bodies evolved to think of it as good taste because they were rare things. Salt was rare. Sugars were rare. It was just berries that we foraged in the summertime, right? And so now that we have both those things always available, it is important to recognize that we can get too much. And so one of the things that people are confused about too is which salt is best. Have you ever thought about the salt that you put in your food and that you have on your table? Did you know that one of the concerns about modern salts is microplastics? They did studies that show that 90% of table salt brands that they studied had lots of microplastics in them. And most of these microplastics are particles that are found in the ocean. They're fragments of old plastic products, fibers, and even paints that have broken down to a very small size in the ocean because, salt is just evaporated seawater, and that's what's left over is salt. And so a lot of people think, some of the salt maybe from the ancient seabeds maybe good. And, many of you may have heard me recommend that until I recently discovered that those salts are even often contaminated with heavy metals. So
the evidence keeps changing.
It does. Well, it's important to keep on top of it. Yeah, that's right. And sometimes it feels like you can't win for losing.
That's true.
But it's important to have sources that you trust. One of the gals that I really like to follow, who I really trust, is Tamara Rubin. She calls herself Lead Safe Mama. Her children were lead poisoned at a very young age, and she goes around and she tests products for lead and other heavy metals. She tested all kinds of salts. I'm using the salt that she said she only uses for her family, and that is the Jacobson salt from Jacobson Salt Company that comes from their Oregon Bay. It's a USA salt. It only comes from the USA, from Oregon. And so we're carrying those now in the shop because I couldn't find them anywhere locally, and I wanted to make sure that we had them available for people because it is something that we talk about every now and then with folks. And so we're carrying the kosher sea salt, the flake sea salt, and the black garlic salt, which we have been loving this on things. It's really yummy. So yeah, we have those in the shop now. And, if you are concerned, as I am, about things like microplastics and heavy metals in your food, these are good to have on your table and good to use in your cooking. That's what we're using now.
It's important to have that information, and you can't always depend on the labels that you read. They will give you some information.
Right, but salts, and they're not going to tell you how many microplastics or how many heavy metals.
I feel there's sometimes they don't tell us everything we need.
For sure.
For sure.
Yeah.
So we have to do some.
If I was in charge of labeling, they'd look a little different.
Truly. Well, I wanted to mention that the last time we got together, I talked about my new project that I had started. It's really a 52-week challenge. It's just as given me something to look forward to every week to do and enjoy doing. And I like things that have deeper meanings to them, that make me think and maybe meditate on what it is about the item I'm doing. So I have really enjoyed it. But last time we talked about letting go, let it be. And I did get a lot of remarks on that. Everybody has this general consensus that we do need to let more things be. Now, we understand there's some things in life that are going to be impossible to ever just let it go. And that might be the death of a loved one, other very, very important things in our life, such as that. And then there's other things, such as worrying or letting things dwell on things for a long time. Well, sometimes those are the things we just have to let go. Right. That was a very important lesson for me, even at this stage of my life. And I think a lot of people have thought about that even a little bit more. So we just need to let something go.
Yeah, I think this season, spring is so fleeting, and the splendor of the season with the greens and the blooms really, I think, beckon us to stop fretting and appreciate the wonder of the season, to be really present in life and living. And I think that's it's really about, is giving up those worries and our self-consciousness, our feelings of inadequacy and imperfection, and reveling in being part of life and living in all that is. And there's a wonderful poem. Many of you, I'm sure, know Mary Oliver's poems. Her poetry is so powerful. And there's one that I love that I think fits really well with this called I Worried. And it goes like this. I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing? Even the sparrows can do it, and I am, well, hopeless. Is my eyesight fading, or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing, and gave it up, and took my old body and went out into the morning and sang.
That's so wonderful. It's a great reminder.
May we all be inspired to do the same.
Absolutely. And so on the theme of my 52-week challenge and the theme of the eclipse, I'd like to show you the last one I did. And then I'll share with you the next one I'm going to do the next week, because they both are on eclipse. Our instructor or our guide for this 52-week challenge, Catherine is her name.
We'll post a link below in the comments if you're interested in it.
And we've done it before. And if you want to go back and see our Let It Go segment, it's there too.
Last week.
Anyway, this one was, she showed the full moon. Also, she put an animal in it. Hers was a running wolf. And I thought that might have something to do with the book by
Clarissa Pinkola
Estes. Yes, on running with wolves. We women have enjoyed.
Women Who Run with the Wolves. It's a wonderful book.
It is. When I decided to do my moon and my animal, and you could choose anything you really want to do, this is only a guide, I decided to go with a wolf. But my wolf would be standing on his haunches howling up at the moon.
Love it.
And I decided to do my moon pink, because the April full moon, is a pink moon. And that is for the henbit that grows out in the fields and makes the fields turn pink. So I looked for pink fabric, and all these take our little bitty scraps to use, which is a wonderful thing. And then you decide, what color is the sky going to be? Well, in this, it can be about anything you want it to be. This is what mine ended up being. So this is my wolf howling at the moon. And then the lesson was in doing layers. So the top layer, this is probably my 6th layer on here of fabric and stitching. And that layer represents the eclipse, when things got dark.
I love that.
And I just absolutely love that. And I really could not find any sheer fabric in my house. And then I thought, well, I have a witch's hat that's up on my top shelf in the closet. I'll look and see. And I think, sure enough, there was some black netting on it. And from the back side, I just clipped a little piece. And my goal has been throughout this whole book that I've made, the Stitch Journal, to not buy anything, to use up all my scraps. So
love that.
This was
beautiful.
A fun thing to do. And it will always be a reminder then of the eclipse for me and getting to enjoy it.
Love that. Gorgeous.
And so with that, and with the talk of our pretty iris out in the gardens and the lilacs blooming, I'd like to close with this little poetry piece from my April chapter of the book. And it's by N.B. Turner. Now, this is a very old one. I can remember this one from many years ago, reading it, and how I have always enjoyed it. I want to have a little house with sunlight on the floors, a chimney with a rosy hearth, and lilacs by the door, with windows looking east and west, and a crooked apple tree, and room beside the garden fence for hollyhocks to be. Isn't that?
I love that.
And so with that, we will see you next week.
Good earth blessings to you.